I was 65 years old the day my own family laughed at me. Not a polite chuckle. Not nervous laughter. They laugh the way people do when they've already decided you've become a joke. My name is Margaret Collins, and until that Sunday afternoon in Columbus, Ohio, I believed family would always be the one place where age didn't matter. I was wrong. My son looked around the dining room table and said, "Mom, people your age don't start over. They slow down." My daughter smiled without looking at me. "You're going to waste your retirement money chasing some impossible dream." Even my oldest grandson laughed. "Grandma, just enjoy bingo and gardening." I forced a smile because crying in front of people who don't respect your tears only gives them another reason to laugh. They had no idea that everything they believed about me was about to change. Just 6 months earlier, I had buried my husband of 42 years. After Richard passed away, the silence inside our little house became unbearable. Every room reminded me of the life we'd built together. Every morning felt heavier than the last. For months, I simply existed. I cooked for one. I watched television without paying attention. I smiled whenever my children visited, pretending I was fine because I didn't want to become another burden in their busy lives. But deep inside, something refused to die. Richard had always encouraged me to chase my passion. During our younger years, I dreamed of opening a small neighborhood bakery. Life, bills, raising children, and endless responsibilities pushed that dream further away until I convinced myself it belonged to another version of me. Then one rainy morning, while cleaning the attic, I found an old notebook. Inside were recipes I'd handwritten nearly 40 years earlier. Apple cinnamon bread, blueberry muffins,
Chocolate pecan pie.
On the very first page Richard had written in blue ink, "One day, Maggie's Bakery will make the whole neighborhood smile." I sat on the attic floor and cried harder than I had at his funeral. Not because I missed him, because I'd forgotten the woman he believed I could become. That afternoon, I drove across Columbus looking at vacant storefronts. My heart raced like I was 25 again. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I might still become. I had no idea that following that forgotten dream would cost me almost everything I thought I still had, including the support of the people I loved most. The following Monday morning, I walked into my local bank in Columbus with trembling hands. For weeks, I had stared at my retirement savings, wondering if I was being foolish. It wasn't millions of dollars. It was the money Richard and I had spent decades putting aside: birthday bonuses, overtime pay, tax refunds, and countless sacrifices. Every dollar represented a memory. The bank manager looked at my business plan and smiled kindly. "Mrs. Collins," he said, "this isn't the first time someone has started a business later in life. Age doesn't decide success. Commitment does." Those words stayed with me all day. A month later, I signed the lease on a tiny storefront in a quiet neighborhood. The building needed everything: fresh paint, repaired floors, new ovens, working refrigerators, and shelves. Every evening I returned home exhausted, my hands sore and my clothes covered in dust. But for the first time since Richard's passing, exhaustion felt meaningful instead of empty. When my children found out I had actually rented the place, they weren't happy. My daughter Emily drove over immediately. "Mom, please tell me this isn't real." "It is." "You've spent your retirement savings?" "I'm investing in myself." She shook her head. "This is exactly why older people get scammed. You're acting emotionally." Her words cut deeper than she realized. A few days later, my son David came by. "You know what's going to happen, right?" I looked up from assembling bakery shelves.
What?
"You'll lose everything. Then you'll expect us to rescue you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I've never asked either of you for money." "No," he answered, "but eventually you will." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I quietly picked up my toolbox and continued tightening a loose shelf. He walked out without saying goodbye. That night I sat alone inside the unfinished bakery, surrounded by unopened boxes and the smell of fresh paint. For the first time, doubt crept into my heart. Maybe they were right. Maybe 65 really was too late. Maybe everyone would laugh when I failed. As I locked the door, I noticed an elderly man struggling to carry groceries across the street. I hurried over and helped him. When he learned I was opening a bakery nearby, his eyes lit up. A bakery? This neighborhood hasn't had one in years. We'll be your first customers. The next day, another neighbor stopped by to introduce herself. She offered to help decorate the front windows. Then someone from the local community center asked if I'd consider donating leftover bread once a week. Little by little, strangers began believing in my dream more than my own family did. Their kindness gave me strength. After nearly 3 months of hard work, the sign finally went up. Maggie's Home Bakery. Opening Friday. The night before opening day, I stood outside looking at the glowing sign while tears filled my eyes. "I wish you could see this, Richard," I whispered. I didn't know whether customers would come. I didn't know if I'd earn enough to pay next month's bills. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. For the first time in decades, I wasn't living someone else's expectations. I was finally living my own. Yet I had no idea that opening day would bring a surprise that would change not only my business, but my entire family forever. I unlocked the front door of Maggie's Home Bakery at 5 in the morning. The smell of fresh cinnamon rolls, warm sourdough bread, and blueberry muffins filled every corner of the little shop. My hands shook as I arranged the pastries in the display case. I kept glancing through the front window, wondering if anyone would actually come. 5 minutes before opening, I saw someone standing outside. Then another. And another. By 8 o'clock, every table was occupied. Neighbors who had watched me renovate the bakery came with their families. A local teacher brought her coworkers. The elderly man I had helped weeks earlier arrived with 6 of his friends. One customer smiled after tasting my apple pie. "This tastes like home." Those 4 words meant more to me than any amount of money. Within a month, the bakery had become one of the neighborhood's favorite gathering places. Every Saturday morning, people lined up outside before we even opened. A local newspaper featured my story with the headline, "65-year-old widow proves it's never too late to begin again." The article spread quickly across Columbus. That's when my family suddenly became interested. Emily walked into the bakery carrying the newspaper. "Mom, I had no idea people loved this place so much." I smiled politely. "They do." A week later, David stopped by after work. "I've been thinking, maybe I could help you expand. We could open another location." I looked into his eyes and recognized something that hadn't been there before. It wasn't pride. It was opportunity. The same dream they had laughed at had suddenly become valuable. I took a deep breath before answering. "When I needed someone to believe in me, neither of you did." Silence filled the bakery. "I wasn't asking for money," I continued. "I wasn't asking you to build this business. I only wanted my children to believe their mother still mattered." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "We were wrong." David lowered his head. "I'm sorry, Mom." For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then I walked around the counter and hugged them both. "I forgive you," I whispered. "But remember this for the rest of your lives." They looked at me. Never tell someone they're too old to dream. One day, you'll be the older person chasing a new beginning, and I hope the people you love believe in you. Months later, I hired 3 employees, 2 of them women over 60 who had struggled to find work because of their age. Every Friday evening, we donated unsold bread and pastries to a local shelter, just as I had promised. The bakery became more than a business. It became proof that hope doesn't retire. Sometimes my grandchildren stop by after school. They help frost cookies and package fresh bread. The same grandson who once joked about bingo now proudly tells his friends, "My grandma owns the best bakery in town." Whenever I hear those words, I smile. Not because I needed to prove my family wrong, but because I finally proved something to myself. Life doesn't end at 65. Sometimes, that's exactly where your greatest chapter begins.